My name is Nancy Steffen-Fluhr, and I'm Director of the Murray Center in Technology, and I want to welcome you to our second annual Women Designing the Future Conference. The weather gods, I thought were going to make an April Fool's joke at us today, but they didn't do too bad, and none of you are water soluble, and it's lovely, lovely to see such a big crowd in what for me is early in the morning. Anyhow, we believe the day will be worth your effort in getting here, and we've already given you a bit of breakfast. What we're going to give you next is a kind of three-course meal in terms of technological visions. So this year's conference is Digital Realities Today and Tomorrow. It brings together many experts from a lot of different fields, most of them women, to discuss with each other, and also I hope with us, emerging digital technologies and how they're fundamentally transforming the world in which we live. For starters, we're going to explore how digital everything will shape the ways in which the next generation of citizens experience government, including myths and realities about online privacy. We'll give you a little time to take in the wonderful showcase in the gallery of work by women students in digital interior and industrial design, and also there'll be you'll have a chance to actually experience virtual reality. Then at lunch, producers from the emblematic group, who are the nation's leaders in virtual reality, will show us how they've used VR in creating a series of what they call immersive journalism pieces that they premiered recently at both Sundance and South by Southwest. Finally, over dessert, we'll hear about how advances in computing are opening up exciting new career paths and entrepreneurial opportunities, including such hybrids as computational fashion and wearable technology. To get things started, I'd like to introduce the Murray Center's longtime partner in our efforts to support the career aspirations of women across the university and beyond, NJIT President Dr. Joel Bloom.
Good morning and welcome to NJIT. So the idea of having diverse people at the table, whether it's gender, race, or ethnicity, is critically important because you do get a diversity of ideas, of intelligence, of agenda, and agenda are allowed, you know. So we here at NJIT are working very hard at having a diverse student body, a diverse staff, a diverse faculty. I get the opportunity to meet with alums, not only nationally, but internationally. And very often the alums we saw 5 and 6 and 10 years ago were of an age when they would tell you about the 2 or 3 or 4 women who were on the campus when they were here. And now we talk to them about the 24 or the 26 or the 2,700 female students that are now on this campus, and they want to come back, of course. They want to come back. So the diversity is critically important. It is in our Vision 2020 or 2020 Vision Strategic Plan that the provost and a couple hundred people, including students, staff, and faculty, have worked on, where we're going to continue to increase and appreciate the gender equity on this campus, increase the number of females on this campus. And we work increasingly so through our pre-college programs to attract women to the STEM careers. Every year, NJIT has 3,000 to 4,000 pre-college students, grades 4 through 12, and I see some of our faculty here who work with those students. So they are ready for a STEM career. Of our approximately 1,100 freshmen that we will see here this coming fall, almost 250 of them will come from those pre-college programs. That's our diversity of minorities and women. Our pre-college programs have programs called FEM. And if you visit that program or those programs, you realize the value of having, in this case, women-only programs. This past summer, and I think there's at least a couple people in the audience who know this, we had girls who code here on campus. So I attended the graduation ceremony along. We invited Senator Booker and others. It was funded by Verizon. Our honors college students in particular served as the mentors and the teachers for this summer program. And there was a succession of young women, almost all of them 11th and 12th graders, who were going to be graduating soon from high school, never had an idea about doing anything in coding. And they stood up and told you why they never even thought about it. They didn't have an opportunity. And what they learned through their sisterhood of that summer program is that not only could they code, but more than half of them now were committed to a program or a degree program upon graduation from high school in STEM. One summer program of a group of about 40 11th and 12th graders. So among all of the conversations I know you will have about digital and digitizing, we still have a very, very significant digital divide. I hear it all the time when I see close to single-digit freshmen in computer engineering, a little more than that, or a little greater number than that in computer science, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. We don't have the applicant pool there. I see it when we have pre-college programs, and the young women tell us it's their first time that anyone sat down and talked with them about a STEM career or coding or giving them full access to the kind of computing power that is out there. So we have still a very significant, and if you come into the city of Newark, where I get to see more and more high schools, the digital divide is massive. So as we think about this day here and the conversations about digitizing, there are still whole groups that are being left out. So that is my concern about the topic. I know a number of you in this room are committed to seeing this increased equity by gender and race, and that is something we do need to work on. So this is very important. I thank Nancy Steffen-Fluhr, who's always a little bit out in front of the crowd on some of these topics, as is the Women's Center here. I thank you for all attending NJIT today. This university is in a bit of a growth mode, so we will be adding, actually we've increased the women population, but with 11,000 students, including an increasing enrollment in males, the proportionality hasn't changed, but the absolute number has changed. And these are issues that are critically important to this university and to the science, technology, engineering, and math careers. So great day. I thank you very much and take care.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Daniel Sebastian, sorry about that, NJII Senior Vice President for Technology and Business Development and President and CEO of the New Jersey Innovation Institute, who will introduce our leadoff speaker, Mollie Ruskin.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for the opportunity to say a few words and provide the introduction for our speaker, because today's theme is really one that has long been near and dear to my heart, the intersection of technology and creativity. Sadly, in the public eye, these still appear to be mutually exclusive, and to some extent, I think, leads to the disinclination of many of our high school students to consider careers in the sciences, engineering, mathematics, and particularly, I think, feeds the gender disparities that we have in these fields. And I say that more as a dad of two young ladies who are making their career choices now, and one that I think it's high time to address. And it's an old problem, not an age-old problem. I think back in the days of Da Vinci, Nobody saw these as disparate, but it certainly is in the post-World War II culture, one in which we really have looked at the world as being carved into the geeks and the rest of the world, the analytics and the scientists and normal people. And I say that as an abnormal person. One of my favorite books on the subject dates back to the 60s, Herbert Simon. He actually gave a series of lectures that became a book called Science is the Artificial. Before he became a Nobel laureate in economics, he was a godfather as a young person in the early days of artificial intelligence. And his whole treatise was on this very subject. And his lament in the 60s, to the extent to which the creative aspects of engineering had been driven out of engineering curricula, and that in an attempt to be respectable, formalizable, and rigorous, they become schools of applied science and not schools that embraced the creative aspects of problem solving, which in his belief were transcendent even of engineering. They were the things that ultimately allowed engineers to rise into other positions in companies, and I think that you can look at the hierarchy of corporate leadership and see there are many engineers who have made that ascendancy. And it was his passionate belief that committing to code, the way in which you thought through the creative process, would be empowering. Because first of all, we all see that we're really doing the same thing. We use different language to describe our communities, our processes, but in the end, the process by which we solve difficult problems would be the same. And that would in fact then make it rigorous, teachable, and something that would have the same formal respect in the academic community as the pure sciences. And sadly, some 50 years later, we're still trying to crack that code. And I think he would argue, were he alive today, that his earlier words in the book, the fact that complexity is often simple behaviors masked in a complex environment, was part of the problem. His tools were not up to the task. And the logic programming of the time was really more directed at the back end, the final stages of a set of processes of pattern recognition and abstraction that they were not able to capture. And today we're beginning to see the advent of pattern recognition technologies, the likes of which fueled Watson to be able to compete on Jeopardy. They're really beginning to emulate, perhaps at the subconscious and cellular level, the way in which we do store memories and make decisions. And so maybe there is still hope that his dream of putting the way we do the things that we do on the computer will in fact be a way in which we will not only be a lot smarter about how we borrow from other professions problem solving, but a way in which we can inspire a new passion for the intersection between creativity and the technical arts. We've certainly embraced that here at the New Jersey Innovation Institute. One of our key programs is to bring innovation to small to mid-sized companies by using these very types of tools to understand both how do they do what they do, and not do that in such a way that you can just find someone else who buys what you already make, but really understand the functional capabilities in your company and where could that be deployed to gain you into new markets and even new products. At the same time, to scan, they call it tech radar, to scan what's out there so that you can perhaps understand new technologies, new functional subsystems that could improve and enhance your products. And so we are committed to this journey, and certainly we look forward to all of you in the audience, as you, those of you who are students, as you cough out the other end of your education to find ways to get you to be part of that charge. So we are certainly fortunate today to have as our speaker someone who is at the leading edge of that activity. The federal government has made a huge investment in digital services, and it is really an unheralded achievement for the Obama administration. Billions have been applied to transform healthcare to a network of integrated electronic healthcare record systems, not just for the sake of moving paper into digital format, but to improve affordability, quality, and accessibility of healthcare. New programs for smart cities and advanced manufacturing are paving the way for the Internet of Things to bring new citizen benefits, and there's more. So we're fortunate to have as our keynote speaker today a leader in that revolution, Mollie Ruskin. Mollie Ruskin is a founding member of the United States Digital Service. The U.S. Digital Service is using the best of product design and engineering, there we go, the two together, practices to transform the way government works for the American people. Born in Baltimore and raised overseas with her State Department family, Mollie has built a career at the intersection of design and social justice. Beginning as an advocate and organizer in Portland, Oregon, she ran voter registration efforts for young people, led communications campaigns for statewide public health policy and helped pass anti-human trafficking legislation. Mollie self-describes as a designer of services and experiences, aspiring to help make our big, messy world just a little bit better, currently working to raise the bar for design and delivery of public services. She served as a Presidential Innovation Fellow at the Department of Veteran Affairs in 2013, where she led a human-centered design project to improve veterans' experiences with VA services. And at the U.S. Digital Service, she's worked on projects ranging from immigration reform to Social Security benefits, always bringing the needs of the people to the forefront of how services are designed. I can't think of a better keynote and launch for today's events. Mollie, it's all yours.
It's a fancy dual computer system. My screen just went dark. No, I'm good. Let's see if I can get this back. Apologies, one sec, folks. If anyone's curious, I am using a government computer, so I'll blame that. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's really a pleasure to be with you all. I'd like to start out with an introduction. I'd like for you all to meet Lizzie. Lizzie is a young Latina mother in Chicago. She has a sweet little girl. She lives at home with her mom and her sister. Lizzie could be me or you or any of us. One thing that's true about Lizzie, which is different for many of us here, is that she's also an Army veteran. She served her time abroad and is now trying to take care of her family and live a happy, comfortable civilian life. Our society has deemed that veterans such as Lizzie deserve a set of benefits, administered often through federal and local government. Lizzie is using the VA's GI Bill to help her pay for college education. She works days and goes to school at night. A few years ago, Lizzie received a phone call from a debt collector informing her that she had long outstanding payments on her monthly school bills. Lizzie was shocked and confused as she'd received no notices or information about this was happening. Like many people of our generation, Lizzie moves somewhat frequently, and it seemed that between her school and the VA's system, her change of address had gotten lost in the shuffle. She couldn't find a place online to change her address. She couldn't reach anybody over the phone. And as a result, a single working mom just trying to get by, before she even knew it, Lizzie's credit took a major hit because of a simple change of address. These days, our conversations about government are riddled with political rhetoric and heated policy debates. But the reality of government is far less glamorous and far more practical. Everyday people like you and me and Lizzie, we look to the government for basic services and needs. 1 in 4 Americans will look to the government for a lifeline service this year, something which helps them get by on a daily basis. These services are notoriously marked by frustration and dehumanizing experiences. And in the 21st century, those experiences are increasingly shaped by the technology behind the scenes. This morning, I'd like to peel back the curtain a little bit, tell you a little about a burgeoning movement to transform the way that government is working for the people with the very tools and methods that you all hone and build expertise around here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got here, why things seem a little bit broken. I'm going to give you hope for the future yet, that a brighter, human-centered government is possible, and I'm going to tell you how you're going to help. In many ways, well, in really all of the ways, I'm a very odd candidate to be telling you this story. You see, I never really set out to have a career in government or design or technology. I started out as a grassroots organizer. There's a very embarrassing picture of me that's not loading there, so I'm okay with that. I was deeply, deeply enraged by the incredible inequalities that I saw around me, the systems I felt myself implicated in that were holding others down, from institutional racism to gender inequality, environmental injustice, from our inhumane immigration and prison systems, I sought out to right the world's wrongs. I wanted to flip the script. I also wanted to flip tables. I protested in the streets. I learned about the power of elections. So I registered voters, I ran campaigns, and advocated for policy. I got a job working for a state representative, and suddenly I was behind the scenes helping write the very legislation that I had once sought to advocate for. I saw the guts of the machine I was seeking to change. As time went on, I began to feel a little bit like a square peg in a round hole. A peg that fits in the hole. Something was working right, but there was also something missing. There was a space around me. I felt like I was banging on a door, yelling into a void, barking and demanding progress. At every step of my journey thus far, I was striving to get closer to a place where I could make change at scale. But what I had failed to pay attention to was the day-to-day experience of my life and my work, and what made me happy as a contributor to the greater good. I learned that I just didn't want to talk, I wanted to make. It was during this time that I began to realize, like perhaps many of you, that the things I'd once thought of as hobbies and side projects, the websites I was designing for friends in the wee hours of the night, or the campaign flyers I made on bootleg copies of Photoshop while procrastinating my real job, these were the things that I did that made me feel the most productive and whole. What I had backed myself to unknowingly was a relentless passion for the practice of design. Design is at its core about creating objects and experiences which fit seamlessly into people's lives, that understand human context, and make our world a more comfortable, beautiful, and livable place. Design was about understanding constraints and needs, and creating something meaningful where there was previously a hole. This was exactly what I was after. Following a sudden career pivot, which involved what many considered an ill-advised move across the country in an old beat-up Pontiac, I set out to find the nexus of design and social impact. I learned that my passion for creating experiences had a name, user experience design, and that I wasn't half bad at it. I immersed myself in the growing fields of UX and UI and human-centered design, and eventually a space that would come to be called civic tech. I didn't think of myself at that time as a technologist. I thought of techies as geeks with black screens and streams of green text and strange languages. And let's be honest, they're usually dudes with glasses and limited social skills. No offense to anyone here. Yet without knowing as much, in seeking that nexus of designing impact at scale, I found myself showing up to hackathons where people were designing apps using government data, or working on projects to create SMS tools to provide services to people in rural communities. An organizer turned graphic designer, I woke up one day finding myself building a better world through technology. I'd found my home. In the summer of 2013, our friend Lizzie's problems became my problems, as I did a thing which I'd never in my wildest dreams would have thought I would have expected. Taking a leap of faith and fighting a serious case of imposter syndrome, I took a gig inside of the big old federal government, at the VA itself, working on the very problems that Lizzie was facing. I had no way of knowing at the time that I was showing up at what would become a historic moment for technology in the federal government. A few months after I arrived at the VA, October 2013 to be precise, a website that the government had been promising for a while launched with a bit of fanfare and, shall we say, some hiccups. Needless to say, this wasn't a good look for the federal government. The president, the digital president of the future, signature policy hinged on a piece of technology which had had an epically failed start. It turns out, however, that the now notorious struggles of healthcare.gov was really just the most visible government IT failing in recent history. Little known fact, the federal government IT budget is $86 billion. That's probably larger than many small countries. 94% of federal IT projects are over budget and behind schedule. 40% of those projects are abandoned altogether. When IT projects do make it out the door, They don't look like the seamless, modern, beautiful tools we've grown accustomed to in recent years. No, on the contrary, they look something a little bit like this. So say you're Lizzie and you're a veteran, you're trying to apply for VA healthcare. By the way, if you have a computer, feel free to follow along and try this for yourself. You're looking for healthcare, so you probably start by doing what any moderately computer literate person would do. You Google. So you do a search, and you find out that you need to fill out this form called a 1010 Easy. First red flag, things are never that easy when they have the letters EZ put next to them, especially if they're in caps. Okay, so you click a link and land on a VA website, which from a design perspective has a lot going on. Despite the dozens of levels of navigation, there's a relatively clear call to action, so you think, okay, great, I'll start here, where it says, start now. And then this happens. If you can't read this, instead of being taken to an expected application, a website, a printed form, you get told for some strange reason that you're unable to download some PDF document, if you even know what that is, because of something that has to do with configuring your browser, which you very likely don't understand what that means. This is very, very embarrassing. And so all you can sort of do is sit back and wonder why. Let's go behind the scenes. I'd like you to meet my friend. This is Frankie. Frankie is the name that we have endearingly given to the system which fuels the Veterans Benefits Claims process. I will not even remotely begin to explain any or all of it. I don't understand most of it. Some of our teams have been researching and trying to fix this problem for some time now. And they started by talking to the teeny tiny humans inside of this big linguini mess, the caseworkers who process veterans' claims. That's them, with all the arrows pointing at them right there. In case you can't see, that's where they are. So we understand what the experience is like of someone trying to process this claim. And then all the way up there, that's the veteran. If you couldn't figure out where that was in Frankie, that's how far apart they are. The complexity of the system is magnified by the fact that human beings at either end of the service are years away from each other. This is the kind of environment that leads to healthcare applications with dead-end PDF links and change of address forms lost at sea. Government services aren't broken because people inside of the government aren't working hard to fix them. On the contrary, people who've been at this longer than I've been alive fight every single day for people like Lizzie, trying hard to push for the best, to ask what's possible. But they're met with a sea of constraints. They want to embrace good tech practices and deliver stunning experiences, but they're being held back. Let's talk a little bit about why. Product development in the government is chronically plagued by waterfall requirements. Projects launch years after their original set dates. Teams are bloated by entrenched bureaucracy and multitudes of contractors. They're all guided by laws and regulations, which add as blockers at seemingly every step of the way. It's easy on the outside to say, why is this taking 2 years? But once you meet this sea of constraints, suddenly understand what the experience is like. Add to this a cumbersome procurement process that only companies equipped with teams of well-paid lawyers are able to navigate, as well as long, limited hiring processes, which offend the sensibilities of private industry's most competitive technology candidates. All of this is because the public sector is at core a risk-averse environment. We have this kind of fail-hungry media, eager to capitalize on the missteps of public servants. Elected officials are looking for any opportunity to make a platform out of shortcomings. And, well, the internet's the internet. So bombarded with negative feedback in the sea of constraints, well-intentioned leaders are understandably wary of taking big risks, of embracing the fail-fast culture of Silicon Valley, and so they do the best with what they've got. So right about now, you might be wondering why I do this at all, and how I'm going to eventually rope you into joining me. The interesting thing is that the government and technology haven't and aren't always at odds with each other. Truth be told, the government has been doing technology for a long time and pretty darn well. A great many of some of the 20th and 21st century technological innovations from rocket ships to Google Maps, started or are continually government projects. Scientists and technologists alike flock to contribute to these large-scale efforts inside of places like the Department of Defense, the National Institute for Health, and NASA. But the now infamous struggles of healthcare.gov shed light on the fact that for all of our spaceships and missiles and maps, the core promise of the American government to provide services to its people are beginning to falter because the role of technology is no longer just a small line item. It can no longer just be left to the guy who fixes the printer. We can no longer just pass policy, especially one as sweeping as healthcare reform, without the skill and expertise of those versed in modern product development. When healthcare had its ill-fated launch day, it turned out that efforts had already been underway at some time to chip away at and begin to revitalize the federal government's technology practices. The program that brought me into government, the Presidential Innovation Fellowship, was one of these early federal level initiatives. A nonprofit across the country called Code for America was creating a groundswell movement of coders and designers building civic apps with local city data and city partners. Startups aimed at city government, at civic problems, at problems facing their community were popping up all over the place. These were the early roots of what became the civic tech movement. So in many ways, the very public faceplant of healthcare.gov, so to speak, was a blessing in disguise. This embarrassing stumble was exactly the catalyst that we needed. Not that anyone was pleased with such a stumble out of the gate, to say the least, but it was enough to get the attention of, well, just about everyone. No longer the geeks in the back of the class, technologists now had a seat at the table. This is a photograph of the first year of Presidential Innovation Fellows and the US CTO having a meeting with the President of the United States. A handful of software engineers were brought in from Silicon Valley to patch healthcare.gov, and in doing so, paved the way for what would become the US Digital Service, which is where I work now. We are a team of software engineers, product managers, user researchers, designers, policy experts, working to use tech and design to deliver better government services to the American people. Our organization is based out of the White House, but our teams are embedded within agencies all across the federal government. We work alongside of lifelong civil servants to improve the usefulness, the user experiences, and the reliability of the nation's most important public-facing digital services at a significantly lower cost. And we're not alone. Out of the Presidential Innovation Fellowship Program grew a sister organization called 18F, named for its home on the corner of 18th and F Street, sort of a nod to the TV show 30 Rock. 18F is a digital consulting group inside of the federal government, inside of the General Services Administration, to be specific, working for and with government agencies. Because of the previous comment about the difficulty with contracting, 18F has built teams of cutting-edge designers and technologists who can be hired directly from within the government to help accelerate digital service delivery across a huge range of issues and areas. Both of our teams, along with the Presidential Innovation Fellows, work alongside civil servants who've been fighting these battles for years. When I joined 3 years ago, there were probably 40 or 50 people inside of the federal space working directly on this set of problems. When I started at the US Digital Service, we were a team of 5. Today, between all of these organizations, that number is somewhere between 500 and is growing daily. Our team is over 50% women and something like 20% women, people of color. We have a lot of work to do, but we work hard to build diverse and inclusive teams. We want to look like the America that we're designing services for. Leading up to today's event, I was asked to define digital government for you. So we could go back to Lizzie, look for an answer there. Lizzie applied for a loan on a piece of paper. She pays her bills by sending in a check. She checks her monthly payments online on a website. She calls the VA when she needs a doctor's appointment, and she walks into a physician's office. Digital government is every single one of these interactions. It's the case management system that a worker uses to process Lizzie's loan request. It's a database connecting Lizzie's school to the VA's loan payment system. It's the VA website she visits for her monthly checks. It's the IVR phone tree system directing her calls, and the electronic health records her doctor uses to manage Lizzie's care. There isn't a single interaction in this day and age which you or I have which isn't in some way powered by a piece of technology, a system, or a tool. Whether or not we, the public, ever see or touch this, behind the scenes, technology is powering the ship. The answer to the question, what is digital government, for me, simply, is government in the 21st century. It's a government that understands how to use and share data, that embraces modern product development as a crucial part of its operating model, that uses the tools of the day to meet people where they are, to communicate and engage, and to deliver on its promises. As a designer, I would be remiss if I didn't point out a hazard of our modern obsession with the digital. In the age of there's an app for that, there's a tendency when going in to upgrade and modernize to focus so much on the zeros and the ones, so to speak, that we end up losing sight of the needs of our users, which in this case are the American people. There is a risk of narrowing in too closely on the digital, in which case we may come out with cloud-hosted, fast, reliable, but hard to use and confusing services that end up leaving people not any more supported in the end. You see that in digital government really is government. The problems that have gotten us to where we are, at their core, are organizational struggles. So let's go back to the VA. There are over 1,000 unique government websites for veterans, 956 VA 1-800 phone numbers, 42 call centers, and somewhere around 220 databases housing veterans' information. I'm gonna let that set in because it's a lot. We're making our customers, or our clients, America's veterans in this case, navigate through this linguine of org charts and processes which might make perfect sense to the people inside of the halls of power, but mean very, very little to people who are just trying to see a doctor or get help paying for school. As with pretty much all government agencies, the VA suffers from what a colleague of mine likes to call showing our organizational underpants. The entire service model is based around the needs, constraints, and logic of the business, of government. So we're showing our silos, our organization structure, and what we're doing is adding burden and cognitive load to our users. A bad user experience in commercial product leaves customers at best feeling annoyed and at worst bailing and taking their business elsewhere. In the government, we don't have the privilege of competition in that same way, and so our customers have to use our services, and we all pay for them with our hard-earned taxpayer dollars. So by sending people into a maze of information, giving them hard-to-use, outdated, and unreliable tools, this isn't just annoying. This feels like disrespect. Over the years, a number of our teams have conducted user research studies, both internally and externally, to better understand the current experience of government from all of those involved. I wanted to share a few interesting things that have come out of that. From our users, information is confusing, inconsistent when you speak to humans, and altogether unclear. Interacting with government inevitably means filling out forms, which never make much sense. They're written in some sort of alternate legal language and always consist of convoluted instructions. Once you submit something, it's like staring into a black box. People wait for months, never knowing when they'll hear back or how, and they have no idea how to change or influence the state of their affairs. From people on the inside, government employees have been using outdated systems that don't integrate well with each other. I have felt this way about this very computer many times. These result in having to manage countless passwords and accounts. There are manual processes left and right which slow people down and leave incredible room for error. Government call centers are overwhelmed. Because the information online and application processes is unclear, the burden of support turns to those who work the phones, and we rarely have the capacity to meet the demand. These are just a few of the high-level problems that come up. And at the end of the day, what's happening is we have a mutual lack of understanding, a common UX problem in business. a gap in understanding between the users and the people serving them. Now, to me, of course, because I like hard problems, this is a juicy design challenge and a world ripe for the methods of human-centered design. It's driven by empathy, and I don't mean casual empathy, I mean operational empathy. You can't just show up and build a car. First, you need to understand how people drive it. You need to know where they're going, with whom, and why, and when, and where. You need to put yourself in their shoes, quite literally, immerse yourself in their experiences. Then we try to understand what we've learned. We look for patterns, we look for insight. And then we make stuff. We try things out. We prototype. Maybe we learned that they don't actually need a car, but they need a bike. And so we build a bike, or a model of a bike. And then we bring it back to our users, and we have them test ride it. We ask what works, what sucks, what's confusing, what do you love? We learn more, so we tweak, and we revise. This is where I live. This is the nexus of design and impact at an unimaginable scale that I sought after for so long. A space where putting users at the very core of everything we do is just a tremendous opportunity to transform the dusty bureaucracies and deliver 21st century services to the American people. But enough of me talking. I know you guys want to see some stuff. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about a couple of projects that our teams have shipped in the past years to reignite your faith that everything's going to be okay. We mentioned earlier forms. This is an example of one of the many immigration application forms. Applying for a green card requires filling out 7 different forms spanning 27 pages and 53 pages of instructions. Most people are highly intimidated by this, and so they hire expensive immigration lawyers. We had teams working both inside and outside of the user experience, redesigning the case management system and the public interface to make it a seamless, beautiful interaction with our government. We launched a tool about a year and a half ago that's designed around the questions that people have and the specific experiences. It's everything from helping people practice their civic test, which I imagine that much like me, many of you would fail. I encourage you to go through that experience, and really put things in the lens and the language that meets people where they are. Something of topical interest right now is earlier this year, the FEC launched a beta site. It's completely reorganized and redesigned the way that they display elections data. There's actually a public API that you can use. A lot of journalists and elections monitoring groups have been paying a lot of close attention, building their own products and tools off of this. But they're creating this simplicity and ease of information, which before in an opaque, outdated set of databases and systems. Back to the VA, we talked about those 1,000+ websites. The digital service team at the VA is currently creating a new website called vets.gov, which launched in the fall in beta. And they're going through and single-handedly condensing, collapsing, and sunsetting all of those old sites one by one. They show people every step of the process. They give them information about what to expect. They tell them the sort of sad news sometimes that things take a really long time, but at least people have a clear expectation about what's coming next. We also are starting to create a bit of standard and continuity between all of this. While all of these things are starting to look beautiful in 21st century, there is still this element of inconsistency across the board. Last summer, we created our first pan-government style guide, which is both sort of a front-end UI toolkit as well as visual style guide. It has guidance on everything from usability to code, with a high premium and focus on accessibility, which is very, very important when designing in the federal government, actually everywhere. These are just a few of the projects that we've been working on. There are some of the ones that are easier to talk about and show in a slide. Some of the problems are deeply thorny, deeply complicated, don't have beautiful pictures that associate with them. But it's incredible to stand here just a few years after starting this work and share that we're making progress, that you should have faith, that you should go out and vote, that things are going to be okay after all. But enough about me. Time to talk about you. You're here because you have a knack for solving problems, for pulling things apart and putting them back together again, for erecting and building whole new things where there was once nothing. You have vision. to imagine worlds which are not yet real. You have focus to immerse yourself in literal new languages of machines, of science, of people. You have a curiosity to peek behind the curtain, to not just look under the surface, but to remove the surface entirely and to investigate new landscapes around you. And you can use your hands. You are the next generation of steam engine pioneers, of boat builders and skyrise architects. And our community, our culture, our history needs you. Yes, there are valleys and alleys where innovation is making it easier for the material comforts of life to become even more comfortable. But those open plan offices with massages and tasty treats are already full to the brim. Our world has so very many other problems which need your skills specifically. So yeah, I'm here to recruit you, to join me and my team, but more importantly, to ask you to take your place at the table of citizenship. Find a cause that makes you want to flip tables. Find a local candidate that makes your heart sing. Find a story that's yet untold. Volunteer your time. Find jobs outside of what is expected, but instead builds towards what matters to you. Women have long since been at the forefront of change, and your skills are so desperately needed today, more than ever. The face of tomorrow looks like yours. Last year, President Obama gave a speech in Selma, Alabama, on the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. He spoke of the pressing need to embrace the imperative of citizenship. He said, "Oh, what a glorious task we are given to continually try to improve this great nation of ours. When we commit to taking on challenges of the day, be it inside of government or in your local community, when we commit to putting our skills, our talents, our passions to work for the thorny, complex problems around us, then we grow as leaders of our industries, as creators and collaborators, but most of all, as contributors to the upkeep of our collective good. And from this, only great things can come. I encourage you to learn more, stay in touch, get involved. Thank you so much for your time."
Okay, I'm going to actually ask you to come back up, but take a seat at the table. And I'm going to ask Angela, Garretson, and our panelists, Nydia, Lauren, and Chun, to please come up and follow up on these really, I think, terrific remarks. You really got me going. And sort of take it in slightly different directions, but also to build on this.
So good morning again, everyone. Good morning and welcome to NJIT. Welcome to the Digital Government Panel. My name is Angela Garretson, and I will be your moderator this morning. I am also a member of the Office of the President with an area of responsibility for policy and partnerships for the university. I like to bridge government, academia, and also industry. My background specifically also includes working in higher education systems, but I also have served as an elected official since 2004. I'm currently, or most recently, as mayor in the township of Hillside. But today, the intersectionality of this particular panel really hits at the heart of what is so important as what Mollie said, 21st century government, or for government, digital government. So I'm excited today to introduce topics that will be covered: digital technologies, citizen engagement, greater transparency in government data, smart data, defining digital learning a little bit more, and also some topics that you also might think of. But I would like to thank all of our panelists for joining us. We'll have 4, as you can see, and I will introduce them at this time. The first, if she can just do a little wave on my right, I'm sorry, is Dr. Chun. And Dr. Chun is a professor and director of the Information Systems and Information Program at CUNY College of Staten Island, a member of the Computer Science Doctoral Faculty at CUNY Graduate Center, and director in the Information Security Research and Education Lab, iSecure Lab at CUNY. She currently serves as the president of the Digital Government Society. Dr. Chun's research includes security and privacy, semantic web data integration, social data analytics, and workflow. Her research has been sponsored by NSF, NOAA, New Jersey State Agencies, and CUNY PSC. A lot of acronyms, but we know they're all important. She is a senior member of IEEE and Computer Society, a member of the Association for Computing Machinery, ACM, the Digital Government Society, and the Beta Gamma Sigma National Business Honor Society. Please welcome her this morning. To my left is Lauren C. Anderson, a geo and international security expert and former FBI executive. Ms. Anderson is the founder and CEO of LC Anderson International, a multifaceted consulting business providing expert geopolitical guidance and risk assessments to a wide variety of public, private, and government organizations, with a particular emphasis on complex, high-risk environments. Ms. Anderson has a distinguished FBI career, including being one of the first women on an FBI SWAT team, which is impressive, as a legal attaché in Paris, France, and the first woman to hold the position. She directed the FBI's operation in 24 countries in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. Subsequently, she led the International Terrorism Program of the FBI's New York Joint Terrorism Task Force, the largest in the nation. An expert with the Women's Media Center, she has provided commentary and insight for Al Jazeera, America, CCTV, Al Hurra, the Associated Press, Fox News, Politico, the Washington Post, the Daily Dot, and a member of the Huffington Post blogging community. Please give her a warm welcome. And next, we have Nydia Guimaraes, who is an expert in strategic performance, measurement, implementing and analyzing key performance indicators for management purposes, cost and performance efficiency in the city of Newark for Mayor Raz J. Baraka. And she assesses city services and identifies opportunities to improve results through data-driven decision-making and business process efficiency, organizational strategies and technology applications. Let's please also give Nydia a warm welcome. And we were obviously graced with the wonderful presentation of Mollie this morning. So I think that her presentation, but also her introduction by none other than Don Sebastian, really gives us a very good background on her background. So please also welcome her to this particular panel again. So at this time, we're going to get right into a couple of questions before we go into some Q&A. And the first question, I'm actually going to start with you, Lauren, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about when people hear the phrase digital government, they often think of Big Brother, fearing that governments increase technology's ability to collect data about citizens, and how will that actually impact within the United States, but also in the world?
Thanks for the question. I'm delighted to be here, and given everything that's been going on in the news, it's a perfect time to talk about it. I'm very proud of the 29 years I spent working in the federal government and experienced a lot of what Mollie talked about in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly technologically. But one of the things before we get into the concerns of hyper-surveillance to consider is that the government is a wonderful clearinghouse of a lot of information that is really useful to every one of you out there. I can remember, for example, when I started in the FBI, the CIA annually published their World Fact Book, which was kept classified at the secret level for many, many, many years. And I always wondered why, because it's got tremendous information in it in terms of a resource for understanding countries around the world. Now, thanks to changes, that is available online, and any one of you has the opportunity to use that as a resource. Secondarily, the FBI in particular serves as a clearinghouse for a lot of information that's important for you as you go about your daily lives. For fingerprints, for example, largest collection of fingerprints in the world, information regarding gun licenses, and for those of you, like I came from the terrorism arena, all improvised explosive devices that are found in the world, regardless of whether the Department of Defense finds them or someone else, are retained and cataloged by the FBI. So there's great information out there for you to be had. But to talk about the potential hyper-surveillance aspect, let me share this with you. First and foremost, what we were taught in the FBI, and this is across federal law enforcement, is we're always to look at the least intrusive means to get the information that we need to resolve an allegation of a possible violation of criminal law. And that's a really important concept, because when you talk about electronic surveillance, be that interception of oral conversations, wire communications, your cell phone, or internet communications, everyone thinks we can just go do this, and unfortunately that's been perpetuated by WikiLeaks, by the media, and others who think that we're just out there grabbing all that information, and that's simply not true. Just to give you a couple of statistics, our population of this country is about 319 million people. Over the last 3 years, for which there are statistics, we don't have 2015s yet, so 2012, 13, and 14, the average number of wiretaps hovered around 3,500 for the entire country, and not just the federal government, but all state governments as well. Now that's on the non-national security side. So when you look at 3,500 for federal, state, and local agencies in a population of 319 million, I would submit to you that that is not hyper-surveillance. Now we have the FISA court as well, which hears things on the national security side. Those numbers are not public for very good reason, but I can tell you from almost my entire career working in that realm, those numbers are in general going to be lower than what I just talked about on the criminal side. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. There's also very, very strict legal processes in place, both as an agent and when I became a boss, what we have to go through to access information, your information, is a lot of legal review. And even talking about the bulk collection by NSA that's been in the news and which was discontinued last November, even with that, if the FBI or another federal agency wanted to access a number that NSA got through bulk collection, you couldn't just walk up. For example, I had an NSA rep on the task force. I couldn't go up and say, hey, CJ, can you run this number for me? It doesn't work that way. It has to be legal basis in writing in order for this person to even query that database. So what I want you to know is that there are a lot of controls in place. There's a tremendous amount of review that goes on at every level, operationally and legally, both within the FBI, within the Department of Justice, and then separately within the court system. So I want to reassure you about that. I'll just say a couple words on the world, and then I will pass it off to my colleagues. The world's a different situation. Something that I think a lot of people aren't aware of is that there are a lot of U.S. companies and some companies in places such as Israel that have been making billions of dollars in selling spyware to other governments, dictators, repressive governments anywhere around the world, who are then using that technology to spy on their own citizens without the benefit of judicial process, which we have in this country. So I see, and now I'm a private citizen, I think you can feel assured that there's a good process in place. It's a rigorous one in terms of this country, but once you move outside the United States and know that your data goes outside the United States, anything you do online splits up into packets. It can go any number of places around the world. So I would submit to you that your risk is greater with your data moving through other countries than it is from hyper-surveillance by the U.S. government.
And that's fascinating, and I think a wonderful, thank you so much, Lauren. I think as a follow-up, I'll go to you soon to talk specifically about transparency and how you increase transparency when you think about a lot of what's happening, whether it's in the United States or the world. My question to you is, when we think about federal and state governments and their release of so much large data, how specifically would you respond to that? What are the challenges posed, and how might the need for smart data be opened up for new opportunities, whether career or otherwise, entrepreneurial opportunities in the coming years?
Right. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Okay. In my opinion, data is being collected as well as shared, right? So there are many pain points or danger risk points. So when you are collecting, as you mentioned, there is federal government going through all these policies, and they are doing this collection in a way that it's a benefit for the society and for the citizen. However, the way they do it may be sometimes not that transparent. And that is where the citizens are getting a little bit irate or not very feeling comfortable about what they are doing in terms of their private citizen. So that is one thing. And I think right now, as Mollie has presented, our government is trying very best to share the data, the kind of data that they have been collecting over the years. But this is a huge amount of data that they are pushing out. And it is, very good. I think there are many scientists as well as data scientists working with them to make sure this data is reaching to the citizen as well as innovators in business field. And they are machine processable sometimes with the JSON format, API format, and so on. That is very good. However, I think ordinary citizens still require certain more easier tools to process that data. What do they mean by, what are they going to do with this data that they are pushing out, right? So I think a lot of, still possibilities out there, especially for women in computing. As we said, Nydia is working on evidence-based government services or government, operations. Therefore, this data needs to be somehow processed. And that part is still not quite there yet. And that's where you can contribute a lot. In other words, data itself, we consider right now as a raw oil or even, unusable format in a way. However, that requires to be, processed, analyzed to become a knowledge or something that actionable knowledge actually, right? Something that we can consume in a way that it can support the decision making for the government officials or for ordinary citizens. So that is where we can contribute a lot, the coders, as well as the business analysts or data analysts, and that's where the opportunities are. The big data is out there, and we all have that, problem of volume, velocity, as well as, what was it, the third one, veracity, as well as, what was the third one? Volume, velocity, and veracity and variety, right? It's not just, structured data, just like a relational database kind of format. It comes in a very, very diverse format, especially human-generated or citizen-generated data. We can call that one as community-generated data. Is very much like a natural language. How are we going to process that? To think about it, the government's back end, they are supposed to process this data in order to provide the value. They have to understand the citizens' needs and the requirements. In order to do that, they have to process this data, and that requires a lot of analytics skills. And that is where next generation designers can contribute. How do we make this huge amount of data in a different format? Sometimes video, sometimes images, sometimes it's audios, and all these things has to be somehow processed in an efficient manner. You cannot just make human beings to process that amount of data and then be efficient. So we need some kind of intelligent machine behind it to do that. In order to build that kind of machine, we need, some technically savvy people, as well as somebody who is who has a very good understanding of the domain, right? If it is health domain, if it is, crimes domain, if it is, technology domain, you need that kind of a mixture of domain knowledge as well as technology that is computing knowledge, as well as statistical knowledge that is allowing you to what is significant findings or patterns that you would like to find. That there are a lot of methodologies available, and those are all the kind of skill sets that you will need in order to make this raw data and transforming that one into the actionable knowledge. So that is, I would say, that is where we can contribute a lot in the next generation.
Thank you so much, Chun. And as you can see, we're talking about digital government as a global society, but we talked about it also within the United States. But all things are local. So Nydia, how would you respond to this particular question, and specifically in terms of also privacy? And also, how does the development of specifically these digital technologies help us strike a balance between a candidate's desire for the privacy and government's need to know? What's the balance when you now localize this particular issue?
Thanks for the question, Angela. And I agree with Dr. Chun, what she said, Dr. Chun, about government data. Mollie also made the point. It needs to be a two-way communication. So when we're going to present certain sets of data to the public, make it public, we need to understand what is exactly that the public, the communities, needs to see or wants to see, and has the whole background, work on that data in a way to put the analytics there and present this information to the public. Secondly, is the feedback. We need to see if the service delivery, in terms of service delivery, for instance, if the public is happy, is satisfied with the service that we're providing to them. So we have, in Newark, we have the Newark app, which is an application that the citizens, the residents can report a problem, a pothole, light outage, which is communicated to us. The second point that I think we still in government, which is not so easy to get there, but we're working on it, is to get that feedback, to keep that line of communication. Once a request is submitted to local government, we receive the request. We send the request to the departments, to the request to be resolved or abated, and they close that request. But from that point, the communication had stopped once the residents sent the information that needs to be abated or resolved. So I think the next step is to keep that communication open and even inform the resident how the request has been abated, and also ask them to rate us. How happy are you with the abatement of this specific request? So I think local government, we're doing this through website, we still have the call centers with crazy volumes of calls, all entered again in the system, and the application, the Newark app, that is for the residents to use. In terms of security, like we have anonymous tips in the Newark app. I don't know, I'm glad that Lauren is here to explain the legality of it, which I am not an expert of. What I do know is the anonymous tips, for instance, in an app, it's not available to the public. However, the IP can be tracked, correct? Correct if I'm wrong, There's
a legal basis. You can't just do it, yeah.
Yes, but yeah, and that's what it is. I find it very interesting, even though I'm not in favor of a lot of forms and stuff, but I find it very interesting the way the IRS whistleblower program they have over there. So you can go to the IRS website and download the form and mail to them if you don't want your IP address be there. You can do the two ways. You can do through email, or you can do anonymous tips, email IRS, or you can do just download the form, print it out, fill out the form with the issue, and send it to them. So I think there's a lot of room to be improved, but I'm glad to know there's a legal basis, because Yeah, it's still not completely perfect in terms of
Thank you, Nydia. And as we
technology.
think about, the local, whether the United States or even global, I go back to your presentation, Mollie, and the very, very riveting image that you put up first on your presentation. And we think about digital citizenship, and we think about what will become the norm. And so my question to you today is, how will the digital divide impact the nature of U.S. democracy as you see it in the near future? I think you captured it, but can you express a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that's a hugely, hugely important question, and part of what I was getting at when I said there's this problem if we focus too much on the digital, if we get too excited about fixing the databases, and we forget that people have a range of literacies and capacities and access and issues in their lives. One resource that I would direct you all to if you want to nerd out on government design stuff is the UK has actually done an incredible amount of transformation over the last few years. There's a single website called gov.uk where you can register to vote, pay your taxes, get your driver's license, get all of your benefits on a single screen. In addition to that being sort of mind-blowing from the experience of America, where that would never be possible, it's nice being small. One of the things that's really paramount to the way that they approach work is what they describe as assisted digital. Everything that they do, they ensure is continuous across platforms, so that if someone picks up the phone or someone walks into an office, they're being delivered the same level of service, the same information across all of those channels. And I think particularly in a moment when inequality is so high right now, and so many of the people who have the most need are often those furthest away, but who rely the most on these services, it's extra important that we understand and design for the different sort of experiences that people have in their lives. Just to give a really concrete example, I've been working on a project recently, I'll talk about it in broad terms, but about sort of making it easier for people to apply for the suite of services which fall under public assistance. So this is food stamps and housing and Medicaid, sort of the programs that are designed for people who have the most need for government. And each of these has this very long, cumbersome application processes. I'm sure you have a lot of overlay of this in your work as well. And we were recently traveling around the country because these are programs that are federally funded but administered on the local level, to learn about what's working well, what the challenges are, what opportunities exist in the federal level to try to make this easier for states and county administrators. And we spoke to this woman in Louisiana who was talk about sort of someone who's been innovating inside of government for so long. She could either have been 55 or 85. She had this like great Louisiana drawl and wore all these rings and just this character. And she was this policy savant around Medicaid and child services. And they have done a huge amount of work. Louisiana State with incredible need, incredible access issues, transportation and like physical access is very difficult there. And she hammered home the fact that there's a lot of interest right now in creating like a single app, a single portal, a one-stop shop. These are all terms that show up in government a lot, for people to apply online. And she said, we have people who literally do not know how to spell the word road. Giving them a website is not going to make their life better. And so having people like that who understand the communities that they're serving and are willing to accommodate and design for all levels of access, it's a bell curve, right, is hugely, hugely important.
And picking up on that, because we talk about other countries, but we also think about just the proliferation, Lauren, I'm going to direct this question to you, about smartphones and other devices that have potentially made every citizen a journalist, right? So how would you also speak to that in a disseminator of data? So now, your everyday person, not just looking at other places, but also just right here at home, how do you see crowdsourcing and citizen journalism evolving in the coming years?
I think that's a great question, and it's really a two-part focus. One, it presents tremendous opportunity, and the second, there's tremendous risk. As somebody said, it's promise and peril. Because on one hand, it's a huge force multiplier in terms of getting information out, as we saw with the Arab Spring with a variety of mixed results, but nonetheless it getting out there. There is also, though, potential for bad information to get out there. One of the challenges that we have with the internet and smartphones is while everyone is putting data out there, nobody is actually sitting there and looking, to go back to what Chun was saying, the veracity of it. Mm-hmm. And there is an automatic assumption, particularly if you look at something like Wikipedia, which people can access off a smartphone, there's an assumption that if there's a wiki entry, it's somehow true. Right. And nothing could be further from the truth. Right. And another aspect that's really positive, I want to mention a young man by the name of Thomas van Linge, who's in the Netherlands. He's, I think, turning 20 this year. And I stumbled upon him because I think he's a bright, shining example of how this can be used positively. He's a student. He's sitting in the Netherlands. He's very proficient in social media, and he started tracking ISIS. He started tracking all of their social media posts, and based on that, started geographically mapping them and mapping their movement across Syria and Iraq and where they were. And this 19-year-old, about to turn 20, has now become the go-to source for a lot of think tanks because of his Twitter account and what he's managed to put together through his own resources, his own mind, and his own capabilities. So I think he represents the huge promise that we have out there from crowdsourcing, crowd mapping, and participation in this as a community. I also think it has the potential to build community. But I found that warning clarion about the veracity aspect and realized that as much as we have this out there, we have to take a look at looking at and evaluating in some way, shape, or form the veracity of the information that is available.
So I can't beg the question enough. Excellent. I can't beg the question enough that just not all online data is actually smart, and not all online data is accurate soon. What is the research community doing? How would you say, how is the research community, academia, trying to address some of these challenges?
Right. So this is a huge challenge, and it's still the road did not go through. So a lot of researchers, when you're talking about the accuracy of the data or the truthfulness of the data in scientific community, we have some kind of methodology, right? If you find some results, you should be able to reproduce, right, and repeatable that process with that same data. So huge, in a digital community, we are trying to do similar kind of things by building so-called provenance, technology. So in other words, when your data is being touched upon by somebody, such as created or modified or edited or updated and so on, we would like to also add some of the information on top of it, and then who has touched it, what kind of process has been done, and so on. So this provenance technology is one way of assuring where this data is coming from and whether it is a reliable sources or so. So here also the crowdsourcing can help a lot, where everybody goes look at the same set of the data, and then they will say that this is correct or not correct, or that they can add some kind of annotation. That is one way of doing it. Another way of doing is that when you are finding thousands of people saying similar things versus one fact that was a little bit outlier. Right. So in that case, we would like to be able to find. So that's how veracity can be checked in a way that is this data actually representing the voice of the crowd? In other words, the same kind of opinions are being expressed toward this particular topic. Then maybe it's more closer to the truth than when somebody who is speaking only once, and that is a little different. Of course, we cannot ignore that completely. However, we would say that we can sort of check that some of the veracity in that manner.
And so I just have one last question, and then we'll open up the questions to the audience. Do I have a time? Are we keeping to the 11:15?
Yeah, I think we're going to 11:15, so we got some time.
Okay.
We started a little late. We have time.
Okay, perfect.
For lunch is
Not yet. So Nydia, and then I'm going to have one question for everyone to answer, but before I get to my last question, and then we'll open it up to the audience, is how can government leverage existing and emerging forms of social media to engage and empower citizens? Again, this is more localizing the question.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I think the challenge now is for the government really to follow up on requests and on the communication with the resident or groups of residents. So that also implies a lot of communication, not only like online or using technology methods, but like in a local government townhouse, and really having the community meeting with the leaders and to expose the issues, and in a way we can present a way to help and follow up with them. It's just like the challenge now is to keep this two-way communication or three-way communication with the community.
Okay. And so this question is, I'm going to start with Mollie. It will go across. It's specifically because we're here with the Murray Center. I wanted to ask that we have NJIT recently received a Cyber Corp scholarship for service grant from the National Science Foundation to help attract young people into cybersecurity as a career, especially women. And as we know, only 11% of the current cybersecurity workforce is female. Why do we think there are so few women in cybersecurity, this particular digital area of government, and what can we do to change these numbers? And I'll just go down the line. We'll start with Mollie.
Well, I don't have a specific expertise in cybersecurity, but I can talk to the
also
issue
digital
more broadly.
government, cybersecurity within the confines of digital government, either way.
I think that because technology has a problem, right? Like the way that we have elevated, hired, and promoted a certain kind of culture, which to our wider mass audience represents, the innovators. It's guys in hoodies, I think there's been a huge amount written on this, and lots of folks doing really interesting work to try to pull this apart, and fantastic groups emerging sort of as antidotes. But I think it's challenging in government because it's challenging the private sector. And if anything, I have to say that I think we're doing better in government. I'm biased, but at every interval in my experience, both civil servants who've been inside government for decades, as well as people who are relatively newcomers like myself, I'm almost always in rooms full of women. I think there's something about the notion of service, about community that is historically attractive. I don't want to get into weird behavioral reasons as to why. But there are even within government, there are certain tracks which there are certainly times where I've been the only person that dresses the way that I dress and comes to the places I come from, and I'm the only woman in that room, but I'm weird for so many other reasons that I'm overwhelmed in general. And I think that there's actually something very unique that government has to offer, that we're not plagued by sort of the same history of culture that Silicon Valley and the other parts of the private industry are. And so we have this opportunity to really elevate women and people of color who've otherwise been marginalized in these spaces as true, authentic leaders, and to showcase that it's not so separate and that diverse leadership is possible and is good for lots of reasons. So I'm very optimistic about that.
Lauren.
Although I did not grow up in the STEM world, if you will, the profession that I chose put me squarely in a profession where there were very few women. In fact, when I was 11, we visited FBI headquarters, and I said, "Can girls be FBI agents?" And for those of you older, Hoover was still the director, and they told me no, because girls would spend all their time painting their nails. So that's what I got at 11. So so I get it. But there's a couple of thoughts I want to say. First of all, there's only 27 states in this country that recognize computer science courses as valid towards all the requirements you need to graduate high school. So that has to change there. There has to be an encouragement there. Second, there are some great things going on out in academia and in the private sector to bring more girls into the equation. Out at Stanford University, the woman who's the director of artificial intelligence, Fei Li, along with a PhD student, Olga Ruzikovsky, I think is her name, created something called Sailors Camp, which is the first summer camp for girls to work with them on artificial intelligence and get them familiar with that. So I think that's a fabulous example of what's out there. And then the final thought is something that I've always lived with and something that I share with all of the men, women, boys, and girls in my own life, and that is, if you can see it, you can be it. So for those of you who are out there, look for somebody who's doing it, whether it's in your family, whether it's a friend or not, and then you be that person to someone else, whether it's a younger sister, whether it's a niece, whether it's a granddaughter, whomever it is. As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. So go find someone, do it, be it, and help somebody else and bring them up with you.
Thank you. I'll go to Nydia and then we'll end. That's fine.
Well, cybersecurity. I want to tell everyone here that that's the field that's growing, and they cannot hire fast enough. And the gender equality, it's just the advantage is not like just because of gender equality, but it comes down to economics. So it's going to be a huge impact in the global economy when we have more equality, not only of gender, but any equality, especially in this field of cybersecurity. We would increase the global domestic product by trillions of dollars, I'm sure. And what I want to say is, I don't think the schools and universities do not advertise enough about and make it appealing to women specifically. And also it's very important right now to start going and informing and making this opportunity available in schools in the early years for kids, basically for kids, for girls, for little girls like we're doing. We have like the Girls for Code. And I think that's going to make a difference in the future to keep bringing them to cybersecurity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the last response?
Okay. So cybersecurity, that is not limited in a government domain. It's all over the place. As you know, as a digital citizen, this is a big issue. And the shortage in the cybersecurity workforce is not only just in female, but also in male as well. So the explosion of these cybersecurity issues coming with this digital era has increased the incidences. Therefore, there are a lot of skill sets needed. However, as Lauren said, we need to capture these skill sets early on. I think that is the most important part of it. The perception of the cybersecurity being tedious, and also it is sort of hackers, that kind of a crime-related one, that may be also kind of the pushback from the women's side that that's not the kind of job that they used to, work in as a front end. So that is another kind of perception that we have to break down, as well as catching them early on that they are not only just, the security issue is not just the technical. It can also be, policy issues, right? There are a lot of policy issues still not resolved in terms of how do we manage the, who has the right to access the right kind of data, and when and where and so on. Those kind of things, actually women have very good sensitivity than male. Probably they will contribute a lot on that front end. And I think thirdly, I would like to emphasize that we do not have a lot of role model because we didn't have that kind of precedent, that job field as a cybersecurity, as a female leader. And we have to have some kind of program that will foster that kind of a leadership role in cybersecurity.
Well, I just think this has been fantastic. I would like to give our panelists a warm thank you for all of their wonderful comments this afternoon. And I believe we have time for maybe a couple questions. I don't believe we have a mic, so if you can just stand and state your name and say it loudly and ask your question. Oh, we do have a mic. Wonderful. We'll start here, and then we'll go to the gentleman. You can give him the mic so he's queued up. He'll be next.
My name is Marcy Zukovicki. I work for a company called Jalim & Associates. we do strategic management solutions and virtual bookkeeping on the cloud for small companies and strategic management solutions for large companies. So first of all, I wanted to thank Mollie because your comments were very inspiring. 25 years ago, somebody said to me, do not change. And I'm asking you to please do not change, because no matter what happens in life, you need to stay positive like you are and believe in what you're doing, because it was extraordinary. And I wanted to touch on two, and I tweeted you, so I hope you check on Jalim and Associates and check what we do, because that matrix that flow chart that it's very convoluted. I'd like to give you an idea about it. But I have two comments. One is for Lauren. Lauren, this is a women's conference, and by nature, we're very nurturing human beings, women. That's how we are. So I was very intrigued when you touched on Israel and what happens in security with Israel, because as a person that supports programs, and I work in Israel as well, I know that there's good and bad people all over the world. And just read today, that the Mexican elections were kind of undermined by social media from somebody in Miami. So all over the world, there are good and bad people. So I'd like you to address that. And then I wanted to just touch among all the panels about cybersecurity. The fact that I didn't hear, which something that I think it's extremely relevant, technology and social growth are not in alignment. And something that has to be addressed constantly is ethics and how we nurture our society and our kids, because by education I'm an actuary, and the probability of stealing and going into my household is much larger than going into something in the cyber world. So that I wanted to address. So I'm leaving it to you to answer on that, please.
Would you mind just clarifying exactly what about Israel and security you would like me to address, and I'd be happy to try.
Maybe I misunderstood, but I heard that there's all these companies that are making millions of dollars in selling technology that might be counterproductive for our well-being.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mentioned that they are one. One of the wonderful things that I have found about Israel, and I actually lived and worked there for a period of time in early 2001, is they lead the way in so many things technologically, which I think is absolutely fabulous. I mean, we actually had an Israeli police officer testifying before the U.S. Congress back in the late 90s, in 2000, talking about cybercrime. So there was U.S. Congress learning from an Israeli police officer because they had pioneered it. Well, on the other side, what you see and what I was referring to is there are U.S. companies. I mentioned Israel because they have a couple of them, and they're superb at developing spyware. So this gets into, perhaps you want to have a social or moral discussion about whether it's weapons we're selling, whether it's technology. I think there's room for conversation on ethics and morality about how we use those types of tools, whether it's software, whether it's a gun, whatever it is. So I mention it not in a derogatory sense at all, but in the sense of it is one example of a nation, along with many, many companies in the United States, that is developing spyware that is being used in some instances for good. And in other instances, when you look at a country like Kazakhstan, for example, that has an incredibly repressive government, when you hear that Kazakhstan is readily purchasing and using government funds to buy technology that they're then going to turn around and use against their citizens without any basis in a legal or judicial sense, that's troubling. So I hope that kind of answers what you're looking for.
Okay, thank you. The gentleman? Thank you.
Hi, this is a question from Mollie. Mollie, I enjoyed your presentation. I applaud your efforts. I wish you well. Digital government in the 21st century. It sounds like there's a lot of interesting things happening, but I came of age in the late 60s and early 70s, so I'm a little skeptical. How lonely is your journey when it comes to providing human intelligence and human logic to a lot of these systems? It's always been my feeling that being efficient, being user-friendly sharing information is not a priority for the bureaucracy?
It's a good question. It's not very lonely. Sometimes it's lonely. I think I want to touch back on something that I hit on very briefly in the conversation, which is that I think the federal government, civil servants, state, local, have a really bad rap. I think that there's a lot of scrutiny out there. Some of it is extremely warranted. Horrible things have happened. People have, had horrible things happen to them while awaiting government services. But it's much, much, much harder to see all of the good that's happening. Like it's a complete invisible. There's a thing that we say in design, that good design is powerful and great design is invisible. And good government experiences make people's lives better, and then we go about our life and we don't see any news articles about it. And I think that that's true of the progress that's being made. We hear a lot more about the setbacks and the falling and the stumbling. One of the things, I also hit on this a little bit, is that just the general incentive structure for technology and innovation in government is different. People are not incentivized to take a risk, to try something new, to mess up, to fall. It's not that they don't want to serve their customers the best way possible, but they're being asked to write memos to their secretaries and respond to something from Congress, and they're afraid that the technology launch that they have scheduled 6 months from now is going to get gobbled up by the media. These aren't the sorts of things that incite people and inspire them to want to do usability studies or to design beautiful interfaces. I have to say that overwhelmingly, the people that we've worked with really, really want to do the right thing and feel very hand-strapped by the constraints of government. And the times when, I wouldn't say it's loneliness, but more like head-banging on brick wall-ness, are when those things just get in the way of good progress happening. And so a lot of our work, and I mentioned that part of who we work with are policy experts, is both myth busting, a lot of misunderstanding about what is interpreted to be regulation and policy, which is actually not, it's misinterpretation. And then also to revise and amend regulation to make it easier and to provide guidance to show what is possible within the constraint of the laws. And those sorts of tools and advancements help make people excel and accelerate the efforts that they're trying to take on. It's not easy work, that's for sure, and it's super slow. But there's definitely progress happening, so have faith yet.
Hello, everyone. Good morning to everyone. My name is Harshini. I'm a graduate student in Computer Science Department in NJIT. I have a question. Anyone can answer over here. It's a general question. I love to be an entrepreneur. I have a lot of ideas.
Can you speak in a little bit, just a little bit more?
Surely. My passion and goal is to be an entrepreneur. So, as a woman, I've been inspired and motivated by the great entrepreneurs like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and all of them. But now, I'm all the four of a woman here. A great achievement is there. So I'm very impressed by all of them. But I have a question, for example, as a single woman, I have a great idea to implement. We need to form a team, and there are a lot of, as I've done a research, with different companies, it's very hard to go up with an idea and develop into an organization, an authority, and develop into, all over the world. It should be spread all over the world. It's very, very difficult. It's very hard work, which we have to done. So, which has to be done. So, my question is, any one of you can guide me in such a way that how strong a woman has to be to face all these things in the world, and how to compete with the present technology and compete with the present organization or whatever the companies are going on. So, I need a great guidance from you all.
So your career guidance in this particular field?
Yes, exactly.
So just more career guidance in this particular competitive field. What would be some advice or guidance?
Like Dr. Soon mentioned regarding the data, how we have to store, we need an intelligent machine to store the database, various different, voice or whatever signals we have. Yeah. So a lot of ideas are there for all of us. So we need to go further, what the step we have to take.
What are the steps to go further than some of the things you've talked about?
Okay, so I think first of all, you have to build these skill sets, the foundation skill sets, mathematics and statistics and all that coding skills, as well as if you have time. lonely work is only when you don't collaborate with other people. So in my opinion, you also have to learn how to collaborate with other people in other domains. You should be able to communicate and then understand their problems and then be able to capture their requirements and needs and so on. Those are translated directly into how to build a usable, design the next century, the technology, right? Yeah. So one thing is that once you have those things, I think in addition, you should seek out either volunteer internships in a company or in government. There are tons of opportunities that you can participate, as well as participate in some competitions. And I think that is where you build your civic responsibilities and also the innovative ideas, through these competitions. Once you have that kind of experience of a stack of them, then you will feel much more confident when you really face the real world challenges, such as going for a real, job interviews, and then you're prepared for that already.
Right.
And then in companies, you don't work alone. You also work with as a team, so you should be able to communicate with other people. I think that's a very basic kind of skills, but a lot of technology people seems to be forgetting, so I think that's one skill that I would like to emphasize. And then there is another aspect that we did not touch upon is that ethics issues.
Right.
And
right.
there is this data mining and data, technology analytics. It's wonderful algorithms and so on, but we tend to forget that there are also very dark web, incentives that they are trying to pull you to doing something that is not necessarily advantageous for the majority. So that kind of ethics, background would be also very, very important as a next digital citizenship.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And I just want to add one thing to that.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't listen to the noise. There's a lot of people around you who are saying you can't do it, a woman can't do this, or you're going to have to compete with a guy. That's extraneous noise. You really have to focus yourself, do everything that Sun said was a beautiful answer, but take all of that, but go like this. Don't listen to that noise out there. Stay focused on what you want. You're the only one that decides whether you fail at something, not someone else. And don't let other people tell you no. It's up to you. You do it. Follow everything she said. You're great.
Thank you so much. It was really inspiring. And thank you so much.
And I see one last question here. Was that the last question? Yes. There was two, or was it
There's
just...
a hand there. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Selsky. I'm a senior here at NJIT studying computer science. I'm also a mobile developer, which will help preface my question. First of all, I want to thank you all for the very interesting panel. Lots of great things were said, and I'm very happy that you guys were here. Mollie, the work you and the U.S. Digital Service are doing are inspiring. It's amazing to see what you guys have done with healthcare.gov and everything else. My question's for Lauren. So as everyone I'm sure knows that Apple versus FBI started about 2 months ago, and earlier this week, the FBI has announced that they do not need Apple's help anymore. They have gotten assistance by an Israeli company that sells spyware. Yesterday it came out that the FBI is now assisting other agencies in unlocking phones that they've also requested to be unlocked for other investigations. So now that my phone is pretty much open to the public or to the government, should I be concerned about what I'm putting on there? I know that, from the U.S. government, maybe not, but it's just proof that there are people out there that can access everything I've put on my phone. Okay. And is my phone private anymore? Go ahead.
That's a great question. Because who reads the privacy policy that comes from every update from Facebook, from Twitter, from Instagram, from Pinterest, from anybody out there? My guess is almost none of you read it. And your point's very well taken, but guess what? I'm more afraid of all the social media sites than I am about the government. Because if you read, for example, I use all of those but I use them primarily from a computer, and I won't download their apps. Because if I download their apps on my phone, they can take everything off my phone. That includes any personal notes I've made, that includes every contact I have, everything on my phone. So your point's very well taken, but we give up to social media more than the government would ever seek to get, unless you're under full investigation, and then in that case, it's coming after you. But you can be as secure,
Well,
truly, but you can be as secure as you can. There are things you can do. There's a new program out of the University of Maryland called Alibi, which allows you, it's brand new, so I have no idea how effective it's going to be, but it allows you, once you download that software, to decide where your packets of information don't go. For example, when it's split up, if you look at countries that you know are very repressive, for example, or might abuse your information, with this particular new package out there, that's a tool that's available to everybody that you can then download and use to ensure where your communication is not going as much as where it is. You can use tools like encryption, and it is in the news. There's no getting around it. But I think you're safe. I mean, I know what the legal process is to get it, and I'm more concerned with what Facebook and Twitter are, and I'm not calling them out. They just are two that I'm naming that take that information and what they do with it and who else has access to it. And that's a risk everybody personally has to decide. Do I want to take that risk or not?
okay, can I make a clarifying remark real fast? So I'm actually a developer for iPhone, so apps can't get all that data, actually. They're in their sandbox to only what you allow them, at least on iPhone. On Android, it's a wild, wild west, and it's a little scary. But yeah, so they can only, like, if you give them contacts information, they can get your contacts, but they can't get your notes and all that stuff. So it is separated a bit. But you're right that it is scary.
It's a good point of clarification, but you're right. There's a difference between iPhones and Androids.
Yeah.
Thank you
All right,
so much.
thank you so much.
Excellent. So today, as you can see, we've hit a number of different topics, from digital technology, citizen engagement, greater transparency in government, smart data, cybersecurity, citizen journalism. In 30 seconds, ladies, please, can you just reflect on one thing that you really want the audience to take away as a closing of this particular panel? I'll start with you, Nydia.
Okay, one thing that I forgot to mention about cybersecurity is I want everybody to know that it's not one thing that makes it very appealing even for women, because our nature to be nourishing and etc. Is that we need to show that cybersecurity has a flexibility in working conditions. That means you no longer have to be in the office all day. You can work from home in any part of the globe. So I think that's a huge thing about cybersecurity, that it's not advertised enough out there to make it appealing.
Thank you.
I think I would like to take a more optimistic view of next generation as a digital citizenship because of you. Because I know that we have aspiring female students here to be very, very qualified next generation citizenship with the kind of digital skills that is needed as a citizen. Not the kind of programmers, but the kind of savvy users, savvy understanding of the data that is valuable to them and the services they can go to. And these are all the kind of things, the next generation digital literacy. And that's the kind of things that it's not just the reading alphabets and so on. It's now the skill sets that is able to do the digital literacy, to navigate, to find their information, find their services, find their collaborators and so on. This will be done in the digital format, and then you will be there in the front end. And there are infinite potentials in the job market as well as in other areas. So I'm very optimistic for you to become a next generation digital citizen.
Thank you. In our last minute, 30 seconds, ladies.
I agree with Sun. I want to sound a note of optimism alongside of Mollie as well, and encourage everybody out there and everyone you know. There's so many ways that government can benefit by broadening the community and bringing the ideas that you have to it. And I think you just got to keep trying. I mean, you are going to get some resistance because there's institutional resistance in the government, but there's so many brilliant ideas out there, and Mollie and her team, what they're doing is amazing. And I just think that everybody out there should be encouraged to bring those ideas forward, because that's how we're going to be able to address any challenge that we face, whether it's in criminal activity, whether it's in technology. The knowledge and the ideas are out there, and push and keep sharing them and force people to listen to you in the government, because you can transform things that way.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've been sitting here chuckling to myself since you started having the conversation about social media and the government, because I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to something that happened a few days ago, which is that the travel Twitter account of the State Department released an extremely inappropriate but highly entertaining tweet suggestion that had to do about your level of attractiveness and how prepared you should be if you travel abroad for spring break. I mostly just wanted to say that out loud because I think it's really funny. But mostly the reason it's funny is like, how did that person get that job? Like, how is someone allowed to do that? And all, in amidst all these conversations about security and legal things, like some goofball intern is tweeting to like multi-millions of followers, ridiculous things. And that actually brings me to a point which I think is really important, which is that all of these systems, all of the policy, the law, the technology are made up of people. And they're imperfect and they're broken because we are imperfect. And it also means that it's kind of a healthy reminder when it feels daunting and overwhelming and impenetrable that we have the ability to touch and influence those things. So just like that very, very bold intern affected the social media landscape for a week, we too have the ability to influence some of these systems. So go forth and make change.
What lovely ending notes. So I'd like to invite Nancy back up and thank our panelists again. Thank you so much for a wonderful panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was really exciting and actually very moving for me. I'd like to, we're going to go into lunch in a minute, and later on we're going to revisit a lot of these issues, so stay for this afternoon. We're going to focus in the afternoon very much on careers and how big data in particular opens up a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities. So please stay for that, and some of these issues will come up. One issue that came up in this, and we knew it was, is obviously issues of cybersecurity. And so I wanted to ask Professor Vince Oria from the Computer Science Department and Jane Gertner from Career Development Services to talk for just 2 minutes about the CyberCore Scholarship for Service grant, just so you know about it, because we've been talking about how attractive in many ways cybersecurity is as a career, and we've actually got an opportunity here for a lot of people to get a lot of support in that area.
While Vince is getting this, his URL set up, I just wanted to mention I'm Jane Gertner from Career Development Services, and I was down at a CyberCore career fair in Arlington, Virginia in January, where I met over 65 federal agencies. I met recruiters, engineers, scientists, designers who are from agencies such as national labs such as Sandia, Los Alamos, Argonne, and they work on national security issues. These are the types of agencies that our students, if they apply to the program and get accepted, can have an opportunity to do internships, receive major tuition support, as well as career mentoring. Agencies under the Homeland Security umbrella, like the FBI, the NSA, the CIA. There's software engineering institutes. There's a Center for Internet Security. There's the Federal Reserve System, the IRS, the U.S. Senate. There's so many agencies that I just want our students and any other students that are thinking about careers in the public sector to think about. Army and Navy branches such as NAVAIR and Picatinny Arsenal, which recruit regularly at NJIT career fairs as well as on campus interviews. And these careers range from research, cyber defense, user experience, life cycle design, development, systems engineering, and healthcare information. So Vincent's just going to tell you briefly how students can qualify and apply for it, but we're here to strongly urge any students, eligible students interested in a public sector career to consider applying to this program.
So NJIT has been just admitted into the Cybercore Scholarship for Service. We are one of the 64 universities across the nation that have been selected for this program. And the government is aware of the fact that it's competing with some companies there. And it was said several times here, the government collecting some data about all of us, and they want to make it secure. And for that, they did some bright people to help them with that. And they put together a very attractive package. As you can see, all the students that are selected get full tuition. In addition, they get stipend, $22,500 for undergrad and $34,000 for graduate. And the only thing they have to commit to do is that if you get it for 2 years, you have to commit to work for the government for 2 years. If you get it for 3 years, you commit to work for the government. So if you want to join Mollie's team, that's the way to go. So you go to the website. We are recruiting students for the fall. Just check the website, which is sci.njit.edu, and you get all the information there. You can send us emails. All the information is on this website. Thank you.
And it really is a terrific opportunity. Anyhow, so I think now it's time for lunch. I think it is. Are we ready, Fran? We're ready. Okay, what I'd like you to do is go and eat, but come back here about 12 o'clock. Bring your food, obviously. And we have an experience out in the gallery that I'm going to talk about at 12 o'clock, including a virtual reality booth and a lot of great digital design from our College of Architecture and Design. Also, students who have raffle tickets, do you want to stick around for a second and see if you want a prize? We're going to raffle off the first of our prizes right now.